I'm Henry T, and welcome to whatever a podcast is. I call it the Henry T Show. Easier, and I love doing this show because when I get on Mondays and Wednesdays, I've got my choice to go out there and get the superstars, the who's who of the state of New Mexico. And man, I'll tell you what, the list is long, but and I'm just beginning, but I'm at the top of the list still, and I've got a superstar today that's going to thrill all of you and motivate you. And you youngsters out there, pay close attention to every word this young man speaks because he's been in the fire as an athlete. He got great bringing up, if you will. He got motivated and inspired early by mom and dad, and then went down that straight and narrow, became a good character guy, great student athlete, had success there, and then went on to the college ranks. And then he got into NFL football, and now he's a doctor every day, making people feel good. What a life. And on top of it all, he's a family man, great husband, great dad, and he knows his priority list. He's a believer, a godly man. What else do I need to say about Nick Spiegel, All American football player? And he's our guest today. Dr. Spiegel, man, I could go on forever with this resume. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Henry T. I'm good. How are you doing?
Man, I'm healthy, happy, and elated that you and I are talking today.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
for
being
having
my
me.
guest.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You're a legend, man. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you. There's so much to a success story, and that's what they call them. They call them resumes. Yours is lengthy, but let's reduce it a little bit today and go back to the early days when you were a young kid and mom and dad were nurturing you to be a good kid every day. Let's talk about those childhood days and the parenting that you received from mom and dad.
So I grew up here in Albuquerque, born and raised. My mom and dad, they're still together now. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary this summer. So
Wow.
that's who I have to look up to, and they're kind of my inspiration for my family. Growing up, I love sports. I played soccer. That was my first kind of passion. And I'm the youngest of three kids. So my sister's 7 years older than me. My brother's 4 years older than me. My brother played soccer early on, so I said I'd try it, and I started playing soccer. And I got onto a really good team. We have one of the most legendary players that is well known in this town is AJ Herrera. He's the head coach at St. Pius. So he was on my soccer team when I was in fifth grade, and we had a really good team. And I played goalie, and so we won state and we went to regionals and we did all that. And when I was in eighth grade, all the guys on my team went and played high school, and I was a year behind them in school. So that was my first opportunity to play football. So the fall of my eighth grade year, I played football, and that's when the love of football started, and soccer kind of went by the wayside. But going back to my parents, they allowed me to do what I wanted to do. So my dad, he played football in Hobbs, for Hobbs High School. And then he came to UNM and he threw the discus for a couple years. And then he met my mom. He transferred to Texas Tech and met my mom out there. So he never pressured me to do anything. It's kind of like, hey man, whatever you feel passionate about, go out and try. Which as looking back, I appreciate that. And I'm trying to kind of do the same thing with my kids, not pressure them one way or the other, just kind of let them figure it out at such an early age. And that's what I did. And my mom and dad, I mean, they were at every single game. They both worked full time, but they still found time to take me to practice and be there for every game. And I I never had a doubt, looking on the sideline if they were there or not. They were just always there. So, and then, watching my brother, he kind of fizzled out with soccer. He played a little bit of soccer in high school. My sister was a cheerleader. Both went to La Cueva, and I went to La Cueva. And so my sister, though, she was 7 years older, and I had always loved watching football. I mean, like watching NFL films as a kid was such a big deal, and I really appreciated the history. Even though I was a soccer player at the time, I just loved the game of football. Like Bo Jackson, he was my idol growing up. But anyways, my sister, she went to La Cueva, and she was part of that first state championship team in '92. So she was the cheerleader for all those guys, and all those guys were like my idols. And I used to watch their highlight film every single time right before we played. And these guys were long gone in college and beyond, but I was still watching their highlight film, even when I was in high school. So those guys were kind of another inspiration for me to go out there and play hard and hit hard and run fast and put in effort and all that stuff.
Wow. Well, you were always big, agile, and could run like a deer. And you have this innate ability to hit hard and knock people down. And when you discovered that early on about your body type and the ability to be athletic and hit hard, what were your early thoughts about the experience of contact, playing football? And soccer, they say it's no contact. Man, I've seen some big hits out there too.
Yeah.
But discovering that your body could knock down another body at will, what was that discovery all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back to the soccer and contact, so being a goalie, there was definitely contact. And, people ask me to this day, have you ever had a concussion, or did you have multiple concussions? Because I played linebacker. And really the only diagnosed concussion I had was in soccer. I got knocked out, I got kicked in the head, and woke up on the sideline. So all my years of football, my one concussion, which I'm thankful for, was just in soccer. So,
Wow.
and then going back to your question, the contact thing, when I was in 8th grade, my first year playing, you have a thought of what it's going to be like to hit somebody, but then when you actually hit somebody, it's completely different. And I used to come home that 8th grade year, and I'd have bruises all over my body. And, I was a skinny kid. And my mom's like, what the heck are they doing to you out there? And so I kind of figured out a little bit in 8th grade, but something clicked my freshman year. And my dad used to tell me, you have to accelerate right before the initiation of contact. If you accelerate right before, it doesn't matter how big they are, that's how you hit hard. So that always, I always thought about that. And even though I was tall and skinny, I could bring it by accelerating right before contact, and that it paid off, and it went all the way through college and professional. Still, you got to go faster than the other guy at point of contact.
Wow. Well, what great help that must have been to you. And I've been in athletics all my life. This is the first I've heard of that instruction right before contact. Accelerate.
Yep.
Man, what a teaching skill that is.
Exactly.
Share it with people, doctor.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. And so that helped me kind of realize that, hey, also, if you accelerate before the point of contact, it doesn't hurt. And that's the other thing, is when you're trying to figure out how to hit, you think it's going to hurt. But if you're going faster than the other guy, it hurts him and not you. So that was another thing. I didn't want to hurt. So if you go faster than him, you won't hurt. And that's something that even in college, some of my teammates, they didn't quite understand that. They'd be a little bit timid. And but it's one of the things that got me through. It allowed me to be such a hitter.
Doctor, how tall were you in high school at La Cueva? I broadcast several of your games, and you stood out. The spotlight was on Dr Speegle. Because, man, you have that reputation of being the toughest guy on the field. How tall were you?
So my freshman year, I was 6'3", My sophomore year, I was 6'4", and then my junior and senior year, I was 6'5". That's where I topped out. So for the NFL, I was technically 6'5.5", but 6'5" is kind of where I topped out. But yeah, I mean, like I told you, I was tall and skinny, and as you remember, my freshman year, I was 6'3", 155. That was my driver's license. So I ended up, I just developed late when it comes to gaining weight. But yeah, I kind of grew fast.
And then you played so well in high school that, and the Cuevas traditionally always so good. You're always in contention for a title. Your team, I believe, was 10-0, and then you got upset in the playoffs. If I'm not mistaken, you had a very good team.
We did. So my senior year was 2000. We were 10-0. Mark Henry was our head coach, and Highland High School was 10-0 at that same time. And we never had the chance to play each other, but we were always, I have friends, Mike Mahork's one of my closest friends, and he played on that team. And we always talk, if we had a chance to play each other, that would have been who the best in the city was. But yeah, that year we lost in the quarterfinals to Roswell High School, and Dontrell Moore, who went on to UNM, and I played with him at UNM, had an amazing career. I think he still holds records at UNM.
Yeah.
He ended up having 326 yards against us that game. However, we lost in the last second. So they would score, then we would score, then they would score, then we would score, and then we would score, and they'd call it back, and then they would score, and it was back and forth the whole time. And that was back in the day when we went both ways. So I played tight end on offense, and then when it was time to play defense, I played defensive end, and then I also kicked my junior year. So there was very few times where I was off the field my junior and senior year. But yeah, we lost the heartbreaker, and Dontrell still reminds me of that often, even though we're almost 40.
Well, then you get recruited to be a Lobo. Wow. Right. Dream come true. Had you always aspired to play in your hometown and be a Lobo?
Well, to be honest, I didn't even think I was going to play college football. I really didn't. I focused so much on my academics because it's hard. Let's be fair. You've been around Mexico athletics long enough. It's hard to get a Division I scholarship. So I worked really hard in school. I finished 12th in my class, had a really good GPA, because I was trying to go to college for academics. So I had applied to Texas A&M and Colorado State and University of Arizona to try to get academic scholarships. And so I'd done all the applications. I had filled out all the essay. I'd written all the essays and filled out all the applications. And then I sent them all in. And then the next week is when Rocky Long knocked on my door and offered me a football scholarship. So really that kind of came by surprise. I was not expecting it at all. So at that point, I said, I've got two options. I can continue my football career, or I can go somewhere academically, and I could walk on somewhere. But I said, you know what? That's not what I want to do. I want to try this football thing out and stay in my hometown. So was it a dream come true? Yes, looking back, because I grew up watching Lobo games and loving Lobo football, but that wasn't the plan initially. So I'm so glad I made that decision, because my career after that. But at that moment in high school, my senior year, I was at a crossroads trying to decide which way I wanted to go.
Well, I'll tell you, Rocky Long, the legendary coach at UNM and San Diego State, former Lobo All-American, running the wishbone for the Lobos. We've known about Rocky for such a long time, and that intensity that he takes every breath with rubbed off on you in some way, because you were a great Lobo, Dr. Speegle. You really were. How much of that do you credit Rocky Long's inspiration?
A lot. He pushed me in ways I didn't know I could be pushed. He ended up, he was our head coach, but he was the one who called the defense, and he was in our linebacker room. So we had Lenny Rodriguez was our linebacker coach, but Coach Long would sit there with the clicker, and he's calling us out, saying, "Hey, you missed that tackle," and call us a few names, and hey, you're not running fast enough to the ball. And so as a player, I was a player who was a rule follower. I wanted to do everything the right way. And that meant trying to make my coaches happy, make myself happy, make everybody happy. And by doing that, I, had to put in this extra effort. So he knew how to push me in ways that I didn't know, and I could even push myself. And I didn't realize that till afterwards. And I looked back, and I was actually a graduate assistant for him for 1 year in 2008. And at that point, I kind of realized the genius behind how he pushed me and how he brought out this animal in me that I didn't know was kind of in there. So I credit him a lot. Bronco Mendenhall, he's the other one he was our defensive coordinator and cornerbacks coach.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's the one who recruited me, and he was another guy that was very inspirational. He was with me for 2 years, and then he moved on to BYU as the D coordinator, and then he became head coach up there. And now he's at University of Virginia as the head coach. But he was a guy who he knew how to motivate players, and he did it through his own example. We did this thing called the Eco Challenge, where you swim a mile in Johnson Pool, you bike all the way to Tramway, up Tramway, you hike up, La Luz Trail, and you finish at the Tram. And he's out there beating everybody, beating all his own players, beating everybody on the team. So he was a guy who led by example. And so that's, he inspired us to be, give absolute effort and no excuses. That was another thing Coach Long was big on, was no excuses. And I still live by that motto today. But those two guys in particular, and then of course Rocky for my last 2 years or 3 years at UNM, but they made a huge impact on my career and who I became as a player.
And you became an all-league player in the Mountain West, and two great coaches, Rocky Long, Bronco Mendenhall. And did it surprise you that both went on to be that successful? San Diego State, BYU, and now Virginia. Every time I see Bronco, I say, I know that guy. Wow, he's one of ours. And you go deeper than that. You were on the field with him every day. And I didn't know about the experience of riding the bike and all those physical challenges that he put you and the other players through. How did that pay off?
Well, yeah, I mean, so some other stories is, he was in charge of kickoff, and he, kickoff is just one of the special teams, right? But he made it the most important special team. And it was an honor to be on kickoff because he was coaching kickoff. And he would have us go in, and we had to know the formation of the team we were playing that week on Tuesday, which was early still. And we had to be able to draw it up on the board. And he would come in and he'd say, all right, and he'd call one of us out. We didn't know who it'd be, and we'd have to go up there and draw it. And if we didn't draw it correctly, we were punished, and we'd have to go get on the stair stepper for 2 minutes. And we had guys quitting, but like that was the motivation. He says, I don't accept just mediocrity. I want the best. And even though this is kickoff, this is an honor. And if you can't do this, then I'll find somebody else. So that was a little thing, but that was something that stood out. So just his intensity, but also his respect. Like he garnished respect from all of us. There's a difference between coaching, by fear and coaching by respect. And there's a fine line, because some coaches want to be your friend, and some coaches are just such jerks. And there's that balance in between, and that's what makes a great coach. And that's where Coach Long and Bronco both excelled at, is they could find that balance to where players respected them, but then there wasn't a fear factor involved. So yeah, I mean, it didn't surprise me. They went on, and Coach Long, we were sad to see him go, but it's amazing that he's back with Danny Gonzalez. I mean, it feels like, the clouds have parted, the sun's shining through, and everything's going to be great in Lobo land again. So happy about it.
Wow. Well, there's something about the way Rocky Long coaches defense, and I'm sure him and Bronco had similarities, but Rocky likes his guys to fly around, and that's the word. We're going to fly around, and you're going to have 11 guys on the ball when it's all said and done. That's hard to do, and that's hard to teach. And but you got to buy into it because it's extra effort. But it
Yep.
really brought success stories, did it not?
Yeah. I mean, and that was my story, right? I mean, I wasn't the most talented guy coming out of high school. And um, I came in as a linebacker and I played defensive end in high school. So I had to kind of learn that position. And we had recruited 5 other linebackers from all over the country. We had guys from Colorado and Texas and California, and I'm not a linebacker, and I'm a defensive end, and I'm a New Mexico guy, So I started off like seventh string my true freshman year, but it was the effort, right? It was, hey, this is what you can do. You can run as hard as you can to the ball all the time. And if you do that, coaches are going to notice. So I did that. I was the guy who was always running full speed, didn't let up. And then I got then the coaches started to see me and said, okay, maybe this guy can do something. So that alone, for all those kids out there, like I was the guy that wasn't the most talented, but I showed effort every single play. So those coaches saw that and it made a difference. And then you add in, then you start to learn the technique as you go, but if you just run to the ball, it's a simple thing, but it's so important.
And you avoided injury. How'd you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, I avoided the big injuries. So, my junior year in high school, I had an MCL tear and a meniscus tear. So that kind of ended my junior year. It was late in the season against Santa Fe High. But that was kind of my only one in high school. And then in college, I played through a lot of little things. I had 6 staph infections that in one year that I just kept playing through.
Oh,
Um, I had a separated shoulder my last game of my senior year, and I continued. I finished the game. They went in and kind of shot me up, and I finished that game. Um, and then I had a back injury my senior year at UNM, but nothing that I couldn't play through. Everybody knows their old adage, you can, are you injured or are you hurt? And so I was hurt plenty. I think every football player, every athlete, deals with little things, but the big injuries I was lucky enough to avoid, except just that one my junior year.
wow. Well, every football player, especially, but it seems like every athlete plays hurt somewhere, but especially football players.
Yep.
I mean, if you're just a layman and you've got an injury here, then that layman's not going to work for 2 weeks. But a football player brings it every day. You're hurting somewhere that in normally the layman or a regular guy, he's going to take time off from work. But football players have to tough it out. You got to
That's
get
right.
out there and help your team again today, separated shoulder or not, you're going to be there. What
Yep.
is the mentality there that works on an athlete where you say, I'm not hurt enough. I can come to practice and help my team? I mean, that's toughing it out. How do you do that? Where does that mentality come from?
Yeah, that's another great question. I mean, it comes from, I think, years of, I mean, to be honest, coaches saying, suck it up, you're okay. Suck it up, you're okay. And then you kind of start believing, you know what, I can. I've played through some stuff before. And if you go out there and if you have a lower extremity injury, if you have a sprained ankle or a torn up knee, it's a little bit harder. When we're dealing with elbows and fingers and shoulders and ribs, those are all things that, yes, it's going to hurt, but you can still kind of push through, and you don't really know until you try, and you're trying out there in practice. And that's where the trainers come in, the athletic trainers like Bob Waller at UNM. It's they know if you can push through it or if you can't. And usually if it's a lower extremity injury and it's bad, there's something you can't do it. Granted, I had a quad contusion against Colorado State and my whole leg was purple and blue, and I still played that game. I was limping the whole time, but that was Broncos saying you can do it. So I did it. So to answer the question of how do you do it, it's hard. It's everybody's a little bit different. People's pain tolerances are different. Um, but as football players, just the nature of the game is so tough and hard on the body that whether you develop a good pain tolerance or you've already had one to begin with, either way, you do find it in your brain to kind of push through it. And to be honest, it kind of makes it better in the end. You don't think about your injury as much. Now, as you were talking about, if you're a layperson or if you're even like track and field patients that I see, we're talking about, time, and time is different because if you have a hamstring injury, if you play football, you can push through it. If you have a hamstring injury and you're a sprinter and you're now a second slower, well, then there's no point of even running. You got to get that hamstring healthy. So football is unique like that. I think maybe hockey's unique. Soccer maybe is a little unique with upper extremity. But yeah, other sports you can't go if you're even hurt because you're taking seconds off the clock.
And last one about injury. Do you remember just being crushed in a game, dazed, getting hit by a guy, or double teamed or blindsided, where you were, man, out of it, dizzy,
Yeah.
you were on the ground, you lost your breath, whatever, the moment that you were just decked out. When
Yes.
did that happen to Nick Spiegel?
So I have a few stories. So the first one that comes to mind, I was with the Browns and we were playing the Detroit Lions, and I was on kickoff, and they labeled me the wedge buster, and most people know what the wedge buster is. You go down and you try to bust up the wedge. Now in the NFL and I think college, they don't even allow a wedge because it's too dangerous. But that was my job. So I'm running full speed down there, and there's three offensive linemen. They're 300 plus pounds, and they're running right at me. And we just talked about trying to accelerate before contact. Well, I was trying to accelerate really fast, and I tried to split them. And I tried to split them, and then I curled up and was crunched over, and they were on top of me, and I was seeing stars, and I kind of jog off the sideline, and then the next day in film, our special teams coach goes, "Hey, Spiegel," he said, "don't ever try to split these guys." He said, you pick one guy and you take out that one guy." So I was like, okay, I'm learning. But so then from then on, from then on, I would find one big guy and I would fly like a missile right through that guy and disrupt the wedge. But that was one where I saw stars and I was, curled over and these big fat guys were on top of me. And so that was one. And then the other one was the separated shoulder at UNM. It was my very last home football game ever at University Stadium. And we were playing Wyoming, and I was on punt team, and I was running down on punt, and they set up a wall. And so I was following the ball carrier, and this dude just put his helmet right into my shoulder. I didn't even see him. And in film, I'm completely horizontal in the air, fall down, and I hate people seeing me hurt, so I grabbed my shoulder and ran off the field really quick. But that was the other time where that guy definitely got the best of me.
Wow. Well, how would you evaluate your years as a Lobo before the Browns picked you up and suddenly you're in the NFL? But how would you critique your college football career?
So, I mean, it started, like I kept saying, I was a tall, skinny kid in high school. So even my true freshman year wasn't that big. I was still developing. So my true freshman year was just learning and kind of growing and getting bigger in the weight room with Coach Paulson. And then my redshirt freshman year, I went from, I said I was seventh string, and then I was like fifth string, and then before I knew it, I was third string, and then I was second string. So, I was playing the special teams, and then finally there was I think it was against Air Force. Coach Long said, "All right, we're gonna have four linebackers." Normally we were a 3-3-5, so normally we only had three linebackers, but he said, "Okay, we're gonna play this game with four linebackers." And he said, "All right, Spiegel, you're the fourth linebacker." So I was like, "Okay, this is it. I'm doing it redshirt freshman year." So I ended up having a really good game. And then it went on, and I just, we played that four linebacker set the rest of the year, and I kept making tackles and kept making tackles. And before I knew it, I was freshman All-American. And I,
Oh,
the year before I was seventh string. So, so that was like a dream come true at that moment. Like, okay, now, I can do this. There's, maybe a little bit of doubt my freshman year or my true freshman year, whether I could hang with these guys that were so much bigger. But then that my redshirt freshman year, when I was all freshman All-American, that was kind of like, all right, you can play with these guys. You can play with the big boys. So then I went on to my sophomore year, and I had an okay year. And I had a bunch of tackles, but nothing special. Junior year was a little bit better. Made more tackles. We had a great linebacking crew. We had a really good team. That was, Coach Linsmeyer. He's there now. He was the senior then, and we had Casey Kelly was a senior. He was all-time winningest quarterback in UNM history still to this day. And we had Dontrell Moore, and we had all those guys. So that was my junior year was the year that we should have won the conference championship. We beat Wyoming. That's the big snow bowl up there when we beat them in -9 degrees, and we flew into Denver, and there was, snow everywhere. And we went up there and beat Wyoming. But then I think BYU had to beat Utah, and they lost. So then ended up second. And then my senior year, that was my best year of all the years at UNM. We went to a bowl game. We played in San Francisco. We played the San Francisco Bowl. We played Navy. We ended up losing, but as an individual, I was kind of peaking. I was strong and fast. I understood the game a lot better at that point, and that's when I was, first team All Mountain West, which was a big deal because we had other guys in the conference that all went on and played in the NFL. They all got drafted. So to be up there with kind of the elite group in the Mountain West was really special. So yeah, as far as, my whole career at UNM, it was, it goes back to working my butt off every day. And, my true retro freshman year was great. And my junior, senior year were really good. And then kind of the rest is history after that.
Well, that bowl game that you played at in San Francisco against Navy, I will never forget that. Dontrell got hurt in that game.
Yeah.
The field was slippery. Everybody was slipping and sliding, and they beat the Lobos. It was a good game, a close game, but you could have won the game. But the elements, the stadium was a little bit off from the attendance and where they sat to the field and the field conditions. What do you recall about the bowl game?
So Navy, they were 10-0 going, or 10 or 11-0 going into that game. So they had a really good team, really good quarterback. Their running back was just a horse. He ended up playing in the NFL for the Patriots. I guess it was their fullback, and they ran the triple option like Air Force. So we had kind of seen that before. But when you're going into a game where, there's mud and rain and it's wet, and then you're playing against a team who's primarily run, and they did a lot of trick plays. They did a throwback to the quarterback that scored a touchdown. They did a few other ones throughout the game. And then there was the big, 14-minute drive where they drove. It took an entire quarter with one drive, and then they kicked the field goal. So it's just they had our number that day, I guess, and just the conditions didn't help us at all. And then having Dontrell, our best offensive player, go out early on was kind of a blow to all of us. And then it was just weird because we were playing in the San Francisco Giants stadium, so it was a baseball stadium, and the fans were on one side, and then we were on the same sideline as Navy, so we could look down, on our same sideline, and there's Navy, and then there's us. So it was just kind of the whole setup was strange. But it was my last college game ever, and I, when that game was over, we went into the locker room, and I realized, kind of that this was the last time I'd be with these guys forever. And I just remember completely just bawling like a baby and just crying and crying. And I think a lot of my team thought I was like sad about the game. And I was like, I don't care about the game. Like this is the last time I'll be with all of you guys. And so that was a really, really emotional part. But yeah, I mean, those are kind of the memories that stood out to me.
There's a word in athletics. It's called camaraderie. You just described it.
Yes.
So it's maybe has 20 different definitions, but it's all about love and respect and brotherhood and my buddy. And we've been in the foxhole together. We've been in battles, and here we are. Man, you're bleeding, I'm bleeding, and here's a hug for old time's sake. What is camaraderie to you?
Well, I mean, you just touched on it. I mean, it's being with guys that you've gone into battle with. And football is unique like that because there's nothing that's enjoyable about practice. There's nothing enjoyable about going up against one of your friends and trying to fight him every single day, with pads on, because that's what football is. I have offensive linemen that are my friends, and I have to physically try to fight them every play. So there's nothing really fun about that. But when you walk off that field, you just went into battle with each other. And when you come off the field after a game, you just laid it all out there. Like you said, the blood, the sweat, the tears. And for the rest of your life, you have those memories. And so the bonds that you have, or the bonds that you form with those guys, last forever. And to this day, 4 or 5 of my closest friends are all teammates of mine. And I have one of my best friends I played with the Browns. He lives in Ohio, and it's just like you go through it together, and you're sitting next to each other in the locker room after a really hard practice where you're just sweating and tired, and you went through it together. I mean, and that to me is camaraderie. And that's, a little bit unique about football, but just really all team sports, you guys go through it together. And it's the hard practices and the tough losses and the amazing wins. You're all doing it together. And that's where those individual sports, they miss that. So, I mean, that's camaraderie to me.
You played for Rocky Lawn. In that era, you guys had crowds.
Yeah.
55,000, 38,000. One game, 42,000 in that stadium.
Yep.
We missed those days. Can
Yes.
Danny Gonzalez and Rocky bring all of that football excitement back, in your opinion?
100%. Yep. I mean, I'm really sad about this last season because all the excitement this time last spring, before COVID hit. I mean, I really think we would have had 26 to 28,000 that first game, if this whole COVID thing didn't happen. So I'm a little bit disappointed there. But if we're allowed to have fans, which I think hopefully we will in the fall, I really think, I mean, just the way we ended the season last year, and even just the fight throughout the season, it was a different team with Coach Gonzalez than it was with Coach Davey and Coach Loxley. Those guys, just like we were talking about before with Coach Long, the effort was there, the passion was there, the fight was there. And you could see that this season, even though those poor guys were in Las Vegas for 8 or 9 weeks. But those last 2 games, the Wyoming and Fresno State, I mean, Fresno State did not want to be on that field at the end. They got their butts kicked. And for us, I think that was the first time we had beaten them since '94 or something. And I mean, it's a big deal. And considering the circumstances, I mean, I think next year, now the players they're definitely bought into the style and the philosophy, and the effort's going to be there. And now it's just going to get better and better. And so there's no doubt in my mind that if, we win a few games early on, that stadium will be just like it was back in the early 2000s.
Well, I believe it. Man, I tell you what, it was like spreading like wildfire. Those 2 victories, and then Isaiah out of nowhere from 5th string to the starter and winning in a heroic way. I mean,
Yeah.
there's like Oprah, Elvis, and Isaiah. You need is one name, and you can identify that athlete or superstar. So he's the one name guy now, known all over town. And he'll be in a battle for the starting position again, I'm sure. But those 2 victories are monumental, in my opinion, because it was a catalyst for
Yep.
let's go buy tickets and let's be rah rah Lobo fan again.
Yep. And the other great thing is Coach Gonzalez. I mean, he grew up here. He's one of the biggest Lobo fans, and he's gonna get out in the community. He already has. I mean, for the women's basketball game a few nights ago when they won the conference championship at UNM, he was out there, with the other Lobo football players doing the fight song and cheering them on, and even though they weren't even allowed in the stadium. So I mean, that's the guy that our community is looking to lead our team, and it's amazing. So I mean, I'm just so happy with the direction the team's going, and I just can't wait for the next few years.
Amen. You know, after your experience with the Cleveland Browns, you leave football, an injury cut your career short, and then it's time to get serious about your occupation. You
Hmm.
become a doctor and you marry a beautiful lady. She's a believer. You have two wonderful children, or is it three?
Three. We have a almost
Wow.
2-year-old. Yeah. Yeah,
What a life.
that's
You
right.
were ready for this transition in
Yep.
your life.
Yep.
Tell us about that, meeting the woman of your life.
Of course. So my wife Jamie, I met her. She was a La Cueva kid as well. So I was a senior when she was a freshman at La Cueva, and that's when we first kind of just got to know each other. Her sister was my age, so I've known her sister since second grade. And then when I was a junior at UNM, and I always had like a little crush on Jamie, since my senior year, and finally her senior year, and I was a junior at UNM. She no longer had a boyfriend, so I said, "All right, here's my chance." So I, on her 18th birthday, I think I asked her out on the date, and we started dating. So she's been with me through it all. She's been with me. I think it was my junior year in college, but I still had 3 years of eligibility. So she was there for junior year, sophomore, junior, and senior year. She was there with me with the Browns. She lived with me. We were engaged and we lived out in Cleveland together. So she's seen it all. So she's been part of those games where I got hit and was on the sideline, and my shoulders messed up, and she's been there through my back injury that transitioned me into my career. So I mean, she's the love of my life, and she's a believer, and we're partners through this whole thing. And she's an amazing mom, and I'm just so blessed that she's in my life, and she's gave me these three beautiful children. I have a 6-year-old boy, a almost 5-year-old boy, and then we have an almost 2-year-old little girl. So we have just such a just there's just such I'm just so blessed to have her and them in my life. And as far as my transition, I injured my back at UNM, and I just played the next 3 years. So I played through my senior year at UNM, and then I got drafted, and it was a back injury, but I was able to play. I just couldn't sit or stand or walk very, very well for too long. So I was able to move. It's just, I had just shooting pain in my leg for 3 years, and
Um,
the doctors couldn't figure it out. And um, the trainers and the physical therapists and other chiropractors just couldn't figure out what was going on. And then finally, my after my second year with the Browns, I ended up getting exploratory surgery, and I had a neurosurgeon here in Albuquerque. He went in, and he found a piece of my disc, which is the cushion between the bones, had chipped off and floated down and was stuck right in my nerve.
wow.
So, and that didn't show up on any MRIs, or they just weren't looking for it, or whatever. But he plucked that little piece out, and I had 3 years of pain and discomfort and hopelessness, because at that point no one was telling me what was wrong with me, and I was 24 years old and I could barely move. So for that to, I mean, it was just instant relief. And that's what kind of transitioned me into my career as a chiropractor. I had a chiropractor here in Albuquerque named Dr. David Peer, and he was the only guy out of everybody I'd seen, of the other chiropractors and the PTs and the orthopedic surgeons and the trainers, that truly believed I was hurting. After a while, people started to think, or say it was in my head, and they just stopped believing me because I wasn't getting better, and it was 3 years of it, and that just doesn't make sense. So Dr. Peer was the guy who said, you know what, we're going to figure this out. And he tried all this different stuff, and he allowed me to play my last year in the NFL. Um, so looking back on it, I said, I want a career. I want to help people just like he helped me. And so that's when I decided to transition to be a chiropractor. And I was actually, I was telling you a little bit before, but in 2008, I was a graduate assistant with Rocky Long's last year. And so I was in that meeting room when he said he was done coaching. And so I saw all these guys, all these other coaches just instantly not have a job. So at that point, I'm like, I don't want to be a college coach. I want to do something else. And that's when I kind of went down the path of discovering chiropractic and thinking about Dr. Peter. And then at that point I said, all right, I'm going to do it. Even though I was 20, I think I was 26 years old at the time. I knew it'd be 2 years of prerequisites to get into chiropractic school and then 4 years of chiropractic school. I said it's going to be worth it one day. And now I'm almost 8 years into my career, and it's definitely worth it. It's amazing. So
You deal with people who are in excruciating pain. There's nothing worse than having a bad back or having a twist here or that, a neck or a leg, or ooh, the pain.
yes.
You see it all the time. The satisfaction in you when you take that pain away from your patient, that moment, what does it feel like?
Well, I mean, it's amazing because, we try to help everybody, and, we can't help every single person, but the majority of people, myself, and I have two other doctors in my clinic and a massage therapist and a rehab guy. When we have that moment where they come in and they've dealt with pain that's lasted 2 years, and they say, this is the first time I've been able to sleep through the night without pain, or this is the first time I can, I can pick up my grandchild without pain. That's a big deal because I remember what it's like to have that pain. I am empathetic. I know the pain when somebody comes in and says, I have shooting pain down my right leg. I had that for 3 years. I know that pain. So to be able to take away that pain, I mean, it's amazing. And I don't ever take that for granted. And that's why I work my butt off every day, and I don't just settle for mediocrity. I want to help these people so bad. And
Mm.
that's why in my clinic, we do a lot of different stuff. Chiropractors are known for just the adjustment, but we do a lot of myofascial release. We do cupping. We do dry needling. Dry needling is awesome for helping relax muscles and get rid of pain. We do scraping, which is a thing called Graston. We do exercise. I mean, so it encompasses everything because we know it takes all that stuff. It's not just one adjustment you're going to be fixed. It takes a lot, and then it takes effort on the patient too. They have to do their stuff at home. So it's a process, but man, when we can get rid of that pain, it's amazing.
If it's not too private, doctor, can you share your faith with us today?
No, not at all, of course. So I grew up a Christian. My parents were both. My dad was Baptist, and my mom was Catholic. But then they moved here from Hobbs and from Love or from Houston, and we did the Catholic Church thing a little bit. And then we started going to Hoffmantown, and that's kind of where I was educated and learned about God and Jesus, and that's when my life changed. So we were part of the youth group there, um, and but still, when you're younger, you kind of just do what your parents kind of tell you to do, and then you get older and you're in college, and then you kind of discover a little bit yourself. And that was a big change for me because then in college I started questioning things, started questioning what I read in the Bible, and is this how it really is? And I started to get, I think, a little bit, my relationship with God kind of was strained at that time because I was questioning. But then I came back full circle. We had some events in our life and that were a little bit, not a little bit, that were traumatic. And the first person I leaned on was Jesus and God. And that's where I went to for when I was suffering. And so I realized that my wife was one who kind of helped me realize this too, that there's the essential things and then there's the non-essential things. So when we're talking about Christianity, when you think about the non-essential things, which are the little details, the minute details, then you get caught up with those things and you get distracted. But if you focus on the essential things, then your relationship with God remains and is strong. So that's kind of a little bit of my journey, was kind of growing up in the Christian church or with God and Jesus in my life, but not truly understanding and accepting and loving God and Jesus until I was an adult and going through the things we went through. So now we go to church, we go to North Church, and our kids are part of the youth. You know, they're the Ninos, they're still little. So, but yeah, it's amazing. And like I was telling you before, I thank God every day for my blessings. And I wouldn't be here without him.
If somebody is experiencing pain right now, and you probably have way too much business already because you're so good, but sometimes we get disillusioned in treatment from other doctors and it didn't work out. And you've been going to see a doctor for a year, but that pain remains. If somebody needs you, doctor, is it okay to give your phone number, how they can get in touch with your office?
Of course. So my office is located in the big field house, it's a sports complex off of Paseo and Jefferson, right next to General Mills. So if you're driving on Paseo, you'll see it on the north side. It's a big blue building. And there's, volleyball and basketball and ABA, Albuquerque Baseball Academies in there. So that's where my office is located. And the number is 505-503-8376. So that's how you call. But really the easiest way to kind of look at what we do as a clinic and what I do as a practitioner is you can go to my website, which is SpeegleSpine.com. So SPEEGLE spine, SPINE.com. And you can book appointments there, that the phone number's there. You can read about the different services and the techniques that we utilize, and you can read about all the other doctors. I have, I mentioned 2 other chiropractors. Dr. Eric Shane, he was a La Cueva grad. He treats professional baseball players. He's done it for the last 10 years, so he's traveled around. He's certified in everything dealing with sports. Dr. Brad Maestas, he is awesome. He played at UNM under Coach Davey a little bit and then hurt his knee. He threw the hammer at UNM, so he's an athlete. So we have, athletes on staff, but, we treat everybody. We treat anybody from age, 4 all the way up to 93. I have a 93-year-old patient. So it's not just people that are involved in sports or athletics. We treat them all.
Is there anything to teach us about the preventative, being healthy, run, eat the right foods every day, make sure no matter what age group you're in, that you believe in exercise and the reasons why and what it does for the human body, staying in touch with human anatomy. Because some people think, well, I've reached the age of 60, my greatest days are behind me, I'm just going to sit in the rocking chair the rest of my life. Bad advice, I think.
That's
what
bad
do you
advice.
tell us about staying tuned up, in shape, conditioned?
Yeah, so we talk about exercise. You just talked about exercise. So exercise and building strength is the most important thing that you can do, especially as we get older. Muscles stabilize bones and joints. So if those muscles become deconditioned or they're not being used, then now there's more stress and load on those joints. And when there's a lot of stress on a joint, that's when we get arthritis. And arthritis, there's no rhyme or reason with it. It's going to add bone in ways that we have no control over. So that's when we get a lot of the pain and the inflammation. So if we can stay strong everywhere, then now our joints are going to be protected from the inevitable, which is arthritis, also known as degeneration. So whether it's running or cycling or elliptical, we're getting the cardiovascular component, which is obviously good for our heart and immune system and brain and all that stuff. But then we can't neglect the lifting weights or the weight training, because that's such an important thing. Like you said, if generational, some people think, oh, I can just run and that's all I'll do for exercise. Well, that's not enough. And if you think, oh, I'm just going to lift weights, that's all I'm going to do. Well, that's not enough. We have to combine the anaerobic and aerobic types of exercise. And that's the exercise component. And then we have the nutrition component, because if we talk about losing weight, you lose weight in the kitchen. You don't lose weight in the gym. So it's eating right. And we know there's certain things that are inflammatory. We know that dairy can be inflammatory. We know, gluten can be inflammatory, and we know refined sugar can be inflammatory. So those 3 things cause inflammation in our body. And sometimes eliminating one or two of those things can make a huge difference when it does come to pain and inflammation. So that's just generally, we have to watch what we eat and exercise, which is what we've heard for years, but we can't have the attitude of, oh, I used to play tennis when I was younger, and now I'm just gonna walk. Well, there needs to be more, because we have to think about our joints and our spine, and those things are really important, because we don't want to one day wake up and go, oh crap, it's too late. We don't want to do that.
What an articulate man we have to talk to today. How inspirational was Dr. Nick Speegle today? All American football player, all state football player. Man, you hit the mountaintop in character, and you told us a great story, Doctor. You really helped us today.
Sure.
Everything we talked about today, I could picture. You're a great storyteller. You should be on this side.
No.
You're a great journalist telling stories every day.
Well,
What an interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. I'll leave that up to you. You keep doing what you're doing, man. It's impressive.
Well, and last thing I want to ask you, you get off work, you're on the freeway, you're going home. When you open the door and see that love hits you unconditionally, your wife, your children, daddy's home, and you get that kiss from mama, what's that like, family man?
There's no better feeling in the entire world. We talk about happiness and you talk about joy. That is pure joy. And when you can see those smiling faces and the unconditional love, like you said, I mean, you can't replace that feeling. And so you feel like you missed your kids, even though you haven't seen them for a few hours, but you still miss them. And there's no better feeling in the world.
God bless you, Doctor. Thank you for all you've done for us today.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
We'll do it again soon.
Sounds good.
Take care, Doctor. Dr. Nick Speegle. Wow, what an experience. And I'm sure you sat in your office, you sat in your living room, wherever you are, and he captivated you like he did me. Man, I'm going to refer to this tape and this interview countless times in the future. I watched the Rocky movie. I watched The Natural. I watch Rudy movies. I watch them all. I'm going to watch this interview to get rejuvenated and motivated often, because Dr. Speegle fired Henry T. up today. I hope he did it to you. And ladies and gentlemen, as we say bye to Dr. Speegle, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Emestoy Drywall, so big in what we do, Rax Lumber Company, Richie Tabbitt, and all the other ones, Dr. Ben Lucero. He's a doctor of real estate and mortgages, of course. But look at that list of people there. Man, they all come to our aid. The Hydro Bar, Tim Baca and his wife. Without them, we don't go on the air today. And I'm fired up. I tell you what, I've got a little pain here and there, but I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to be running again, lifting, running, getting the cardio done. Man, throwing the football again. Man, my greatest days are in front of me, because Dr. Speegle said it can happen to Henry T. if I follow all that advice he gave us at the end of the conversation today. I'm pumped. Well, I guess that's going to do it today. Everybody's telling me we're out of time, and I'll say God bless you. We'll see you again on Wednesday, and I think we're going to have Michael Cooper on Wednesday right here. Have a great day. Doctor, again, thank you. God bless all of you. We'll see you Wednesday.